Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable discussion. Before we get started, let me first remind you that we are covered by the BIPCOT No Government License, which allows for the use and reuse of this podcast by anyone and everyone except for governments and the bludgies thereof. You can learn more about that at bipcot.org. That is BIPCOT.org. We're also protected by Brandenburg v. Ohio, 1969, which ruled that the government cannot punish inflammatory speech unless that speech is, quote, directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. Therefore, everything said here on Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable discussion is entirely hypothetical. I believe this is episode 169. So, nice.
Is it 170?
Giggity.
169, because Anne was 168.
Oh,
So,
nice. So,
nice.
169.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, what he said.
That's
Yeah.
Quagmire.
So, yeah, I guess we're just going to get into it, I guess. I don't really have anything to talk about.
Not really. I mean, as far as I know, we're just talking about fucking the shit show that is the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. The
Yeah.
shit show that is this world.
Yeah, I got my Ukraine talk in a couple days ago when I recorded with the guys at Biting the Bullet.
Yeah. That's I haven't seen it yet, but
It's not out yet.
Oh, it's not out yet. Okay.
No. If they follow their regular drop, I think it'll be out Monday. So tomorrow, if you're listening to this live, or now if you're listening to it on Monday.
Yeah. Might already be out.
Yeah, that was a trip, man. Those guys are like, I've been following them since they started. I have a thing for like anarchist veterans. They can reach people that I can't, just by simply being veterans.
Which I still think is ridiculous, but yeah, we definitely can. I mean, we're able to, when we bring up the evils of government and everything, everybody understands that we're approaching that from a background of having been one of the people who did those bad things. Like, we know for a fact we were there.
Especially when it comes to things like war, like foreign policy, when it comes to firearms, things like that. Like you can speak from a position of like knowledge, right? And from a position as a veteran, like you can start with things like, well, as a veteran, right, or as a combat veteran, I think it gives a lot of credence, and I don't think enough anarchists who serve use that tool.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's like a double-edged sword, though, because you get the Democrat, veterans that are anti-gun and this because they've swallowed the boot so deep, that there's no recovery for them. Dan Crenshaw.
We have an article about them later. about those pro-war Democrats. It's not on the list. That was going to be the surprise. That was going to be a surprise one. So surprise. No. But yeah, that was a good time. That was a real good time. It was, I've been following those since they were like episode 4 or 5 or something like that. They're like 120 something. And in the Discord chat and Telegram or Discord chat and Twitter, and just I don't know. It was like as soon as I logged on, it was like, hey, what's up, bro? And it was just like instant. It was an instant vibe, and we went for 2 hours. Like without even blinking, we went for 2 hours. So
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It was like talking to you guys, but like they were Marines, so yeah.
Just throw some crayons at them, you'll distract them, it's fine.
No count for taste.
No. But that was a good time. I'm looking forward to that one coming out and getting some feedback, and so They
We'll have to share the
they
hell out of that one too.
yeah, they broached the subject afterwards of them having to come on with us.
Nice,
So,
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, they hit me up already too.
Yeah.
That I might be on at some point.
I pitched you hard.
So.
I pitched you hard.
Yeah, I don't know why, man. I'm just a dude. That's I'm just a dude who talks a lot.
No, you're just a drunk dude.
Yeah, I'm just a drunk Irishman who talks a lot.
So
and wears weird T-shirts like this one.
Let's see. Do I have any drunk Irishman stories? I don't have any drunk Irishman articles. Sorry.
No, I don't think you do. It's it's the one with the sanctions. Before we get to sanctions, I actually just watched an old documentary. It was about the one
about the sanctions are akin to declaration of war, or the one about sanctions could make Russia get closer to China.
The either or. I just watched a documentary. It was about the Yaman, something like that. The giant Buddhas that used to be in Afghanistan that the Taliban blew up in March of 2001.
There you go.
And
breaking news article: Congress seeks to restrict trade with Russia. What happens when trades don't cross borders?
When goods and services don't cross borders, soldiers will.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was a really surreal thing to see because the documentary was filmed in very, very early 2001 in Afghanistan. Very early 01. They hadn't blown up the Buddhas yet. That wouldn't happen until March of 01. 9/11 obviously wouldn't happen for months. And the Taliban's still entrenched since 96 at that point. And he's talking about, having covered the war in Afghanistan for 20 years. And it took me a second to remind myself that he was talking about the Russian invasion and then the Afghani civil war. But he mentions, how isolated Afghanistan was made as a result of the Taliban taking over and all the international sanctions and everything else that were put out there. And what was interesting is that he's talking to this average Afghani who's like, of course, everybody's pissed off at the West. Why wouldn't we be? What are these sanctions for? You're punishing average people. We've done no crime. Why are we the ones who have to suffer because of the actions of somebody that we had nothing to do with?
Yep. Quote, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House is exploring legislation to further isolate Russia from the global economy, including banning the import of its oil and energy products into the U.S.
Because it's patriotic to spend $12 a gallon on gas.
Let's see. I took
a sacrifice we're willing to make.
I've been
a sacrifice the rich are willing to make.
I've been checking Gas Buddy every single day. And today it was for regular, it was $4.99 for regular at my local.
Ouch.
Yes. So $4.99 today. 2 days ago it was $4.75. And then a couple days before that, or the day before that, it was $4.53. So 3.3, it was $4.53. Today it is $4.99.
It is $4.64 right now
in Wisconsin.
Around here. Well, and we're La Crosse, where I'm at in particular, is lucky because we have we get tons of gas shipped in here we're right on the Mississippi, so we get a lot of the tankers, the big tankers, and we have a major train depot here too for freight. So gas tends to be pretty cheap here all the time because it's really easy to get here because it's going directly from the major transport right here. But yeah, the cheapest is $4.29, and that's at Woodman's. But otherwise, all the quick trips are like $4.64, $4.74.
Yep. So here, my brother sent this one to me on Friday. This is Eureka, California, and that was on Friday, which is the 3rd or the 4th. Regular $5.45, diesel $6.09. Yeah.
We're currently at $3.38 a gallon at the gas station closest to me.
And that's Colorado Springs ish.
Golden, Colorado.
Golden, Colorado.
364 going a little further out. I mean, I saw it as high as 389 yesterday, but
let's see.
Some
Schloss says 91 octane for 399 for regular.
Yeah, he's saying the prices that I'm giving you are for 91 because, well, yeah, why would I look at anything else? The only thing I can run in my truck. But 9.5 miles per gallon, and it's almost $5 a gallon. It cost me $100+ to fill my tank.
Those I saw one a truck driver the other day. He posted because they get like 5 mpg or something like that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right, so it's literally right now at $1 a mile.
Oh my god!
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Let that sink in. And when you start wondering about inflation, why prices are going up, it's because gas is costing truckers $1 a mile to deliver goods.
Yep. So figure if they're getting paid, what, 75 cents a mile, 65 cents a mile, 44 cents a mile for their haul, plus whatever for the load, they're breaking even.
Maybe.
That's
yeah. Yeah, it's insane. It's fucking insane. But Putin says Western sanctions are akin to a declaration of war.
I just hope I get to watch the marshmallows roast before I vaporize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, if you pre-manufacture the s'mores and put them in your pocket, they will finish and be perfectly gooey like a billionth of a second before you get vaporized. So for a period of time, there will be a perfectly good s'more ready to eat in your pocket.
Yeah. The world's most perfect s'more will exist.
You have to time it. You have to hold it like right here, right as the blast goes, and then just
all that meat in your freezer.
You're done.
There's a point in time where all that meat in your freezer will be perfectly cooked.
Yeah, but no, because it clearly will survive. I saw Indiana Jones in the Crystal Skull. I know that if it's in the refrigerator, it will be okay.
Okay, that was a 1940s refrigerator, not the 2000s.
Oh, okay, all right, now. Yeah, that's right. That one was lead lined. I forgot that.
Yeah.
That one was lead lined. That's what does it. Okay. Yeah. It also helps it survive the laws of physics.
Yes.
So. Well, yeah, that and being a movie helps.
Well. I will have you know that Indiana Jones was a documentary and the events actually happened in real time.
Okay.
Are you suggesting that Hollywood might lie to me?
Never.
No.
No. Red Dawn happened. It happened. But President Vladimir Putin said on Saturday that the Western sanctions on Russia were akin to a declaration of war and warned that any attempt to impose a no-fly zone in Ukraine would lead to catastrophic consequences for the world. Putin reiterated that his aims were to defend Russian-speaking communities through the, quote, demilitarization and denazification of the country so that Russia's former Soviet neighbor became neutral and no longer threatened Russia. I mean, I can't argue against those two things with the NATO push and the Azov and what we're reading about the evacuations and
there's actually a historical precedent for what Putin's saying, because the reality is from the late 17th century until 1954, the mid 20th century, the Donbass region and Crimea were part of Russia. They were part of Russia and the Soviet Union. They were not part of the various iterations of Ukraine in that time.
Yeah, period. That's one of the terms. One of the terms that they use for those people is ethically Russian.
Yeah, they're what's the word? Rusophones. That's the word I'm thinking of. They're Rusophones. The Donbass region and the Ukraine region are something like in the low 90 percentile range of ethnic Russian and Russian speaking. The next couple of regions over are also like in the mid to high 80% for it. Like they're very much Russian. And when you consider that it wasn't until Nikita Khrushchev took over the Soviet Union that Crimea moved back to be part of Ukraine again, it kind of makes sense that you'd say, well, historically this was Russian anyway. And, you know, you have the neo-Nazis taking over since 2014, since Euromaidan. And that's, you know, that's a big thing. Like you can't just look at the conflict in Ukraine with a black and white, Ukrainians good, Russians bad. No, that isn't how this works, man. There are no good guys here. There are no good guys.
That grandma on the news showing her holding the AK-12 and her collection of Molotovs was pretty fucking base, though.
Yeah,
but
they had that.
She's a good guy.
Well, and they had that one old lady that was like, that was rocking an AR. Like she had like a full on AR with a suppressor and everything on it, and standing there, and
you're just like you're just like, mommy.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's like, mommy. No waifu polos in her closet.
Well, you know, I mean, and it's not like the Slavs of the Ukraine aren't familiar with fighting, right? Like, I mean, they've been taken over by they were attacked twice by the Mongols. You know, the Golden Horde invaded them first, and then the Crimean Khanate took them over for a while, and those are Mongol. They were invaded and taken over by the Poles, Pole/Lithuanian, I think.
Poland,
the Russians, the Ottomans threatened them multiple times. It on and on and on. And at one time, they were actually Kievan Rus is what it's called. Was the largest kingdom in Europe in the 13th century in terms of geographic size. It was the largest, and it's just been getting picked apart and reinvaded and invaded ever since. I mean, the word Ukraine generally is translated as borderland. Like, that should tell you what's going on here, that this is an ongoing conflict that has been happening for 1,000 years.
There's been no stability there at all. Literally ever.
It'll just continue probably for another 1,000 years if the Earth is still here.
Yeah.
After a thermonuclear war.
It's going to be Afghanistan 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you know, look at how that worked out for the Soviets the last time. So,
look how that worked out for the Americans.
Look how it worked out. Actually, I mean, realistically, Afghanistan is the graveyard empires. Look at how it worked out for the British and the French and the Americans and the Soviets and the Mongols and
the Afghan National Army.
Their list goes on and on and on. Alexander the Great. Look at how it worked out for him.
But yeah, I mean, we were joking about it in the Telegram chat about it's the same sort of pretext, right? It's one side's pushing this ideology, and they're trying to push through this country to get to this other country, right? That was the whole thing, to get to Russia. In Afghanistan, you know, we used the U.S. used the Taliban, right? We used Al Qaeda. We literally created Al Qaeda, right? To fight the Russians. There's a whole movie about it. Thanks, Rambo.
Yeah, and it completely backfired. And well, I mean, a lot of people
now we're using Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to push the Donbass people, try to push Crimea people, try to push that anti-Soviet rhetoric through NATO, through Ukraine, to go after Russia. Right. Well, so that makes Ukraine Afghanistan 2.0, and it makes the Azov like the new Taliban.
Yeah, and the Azov, the battalion is, I mean, keep in mind, like, the whole debacle, right, that happened a little while ago with Headstamp Publishing, with Ian McCollum from Forgotten Weapons, with the book he was going to publish and everything, and then everybody got, you know, really upset about it because he hadn't vetted the guy enough, and it's because he was a literal Nazi. Yeah, the literal Nazi, the book, was about fighting with the Azov battalion. Like, this dude is an actual fucking Nazi, and the same people who were up in arms about that less than 2 full months ago are now going, yay, Azov battalion. because they're fighting the fucking Russians. Like, this is ridiculous.
Facebook allows praise of neo-Nazi Ukrainian battalion if it fights Russian invasion. Facebook will temporarily allow its billions of users to praise the Azov Battalion, a Ukrainian neo-Nazi military unit previously banned from being freely discussed under the company's dangerous individuals and organization policy. The policy shift made this week has pegged the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine and preceding military escalations. The Azov Battalion, which functioned as an armed wing of the broader Ukrainian white nationalist Azov movement, began as a volunteer anti-Russian militia before formally joining the Ukrainian National Guard in 2014. These are the people that Obama was supplying in 2014. Just, I'm putting out. These are the Ukrainian moderate rebels.
Perfectly fine when their guy does it.
Yes. So, but according to internal policy materials reviewed by The Intercept, Facebook will, quote, allow praise of the Azov Battalion when explicitly and exclusively praising their role in defending Ukraine or their role as part of Ukraine's National Guard.
Yeah, I mean,
so you can you can post the Ukrainian swastika, but not the German swastika, because German white nationalists are bad, but Ukrainian white nationalists are good-ish somehow.
Well, and it's I mean, like, keep in mind there's a really good documentary called My Nazi Legacy: The Sins of the Father, which I encourage everybody to watch. It's fucking fantastic, but it's about the two children of Nazi war criminals, like hardcore fucking Nazi war criminals. And at one point during the film, Horst von Wachter, who is the son of Otto von Wachter, who's the guy who famously declared the Balkans Judenfrei during the Holocaust, he goes to this rally that's being held at a memorial to his father, the Holocaust war criminal, and there is an entire Azov battalion like detachment there in full SS uniform, armbands, swastikas, the works, that are super excited to meet his father and meet his son and talking about how much his father was a hero to the Ukrainian people. This is the kind of Nazis that you're dealing with. These aren't even neo-Nazis. These are just full-on continued Nazis. Like, this is... and these are the people that you're like, oh, it's okay if you praise them. What?
Mm-hmm. All the anti-fascists.
Not only if you don't praise them, then you're a racist. Because apparently Putin is bad, right? So Putin's a racist because there's transgender and minorities in Ukraine. So if you don't praise the white nationalist Azov Battalion, then you're a racist.
I gotta tell you, peak irony in this whole thing was seeing Pussy Riot post links for donations to the Azov Battalion.
That was
the Nazis.
That was peak. That was absolute fucking peak.
I stared at it and I was just like, what? You understand they're Nazis, right? Like, not a little bit Nazi. These guys are not like, oh, well, they make some racist comments every so. They're actual armband wearing, goose stepping Nazis.
But red man bad.
Oh my god, yeah, and then they go, oh, Putin is the modern Hitler, and I'm like, no, that he's fighting the Nazis.
That statement would probably actually upset members of the Azov Battalion.
Yeah, it would actually. That would actually piss them off because they'd be like, but Hitler, he do nothing wrong.
Oh my goodness.
Because,
But I'm the crazy one. But I'm the one that's labeled an extremist, a dangerous, violent extremist for not towing the line.
Yeah, for not condemning Putin. Like, yeah, but Putin shouldn't be going to war. Nobody should be going to war, right? War is bad. We're anti-war flat out. War is bad. But going, well, I so don't like this guy that I'm going to support Nazis is insane. So
like that is just Goebbels. Goebbels is rolling in his grave so hard. Goebbels is just like he's laughing. If he wasn't already dead, he'd die laughing.
Well, yeah, I mean, and don't
like,
get
just
Putin's
be like,
terrible,
oh
right?
shit, it works.
Yeah, I mean, Putin's terrible, right? Like he's an autocrat. He's a KGB, former KGB agent. He's kind of a neo-Soviet. He's, it's if not a wannabe Romanov. He is like that. He is evil. He's a tyrant. He's a murderer, and he's awful. Don't get me wrong. He is.
Well, he knows where the bodies are buried because he buried them.
Yeah. He also used to walk like a penguin, which was hilarious. Seriously, go back and watch like early like Clinton era videos of him. He totally walks like a penguin. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But he's terrible. Yes, he's awful. I agree with you. However, he's also fighting people who are equally as terrible and awful and also murderers and commit war crimes. And when it's two war crime committing awful tyrannies fighting each other, you really shouldn't have a dog in that fight.
No. My lesser of two evils.
Yeah, like you should just be hoping that both sides lose. And badly.
No. But on the sanctions front, article from Time, sanctions on Russia could drive Moscow closer to Beijing and change the global financial system.
Gosh, what a shock.
Like, not only that, but like they banned Russia from SWIFT. Right? That's the international fund transfer system. So Russia went, okay, and they created their own SWIFT alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, SWIFT has like 11,000 members. Their new one only has like 400 or whatever. But like they didn't blink.
Yeah.
Right? Well, if you want to ban Russian export of oil, Russia's going to have enough oil. If you want to ban Russian export of wheat, Russia's going to have enough wheat to eat.
Yeah.
Right? The world won't. 20% of the gasoline that the United States uses comes from Russia.
Yeah.
Right? Biden and his cronies were like, "Oh, we're going to help. We're going to release 60 million barrels from the emergency reserves." The US uses 18 million barrels a day.
Yeah, we use something like 8 billion just for like cars.
Yeah. Like what was it? What was it like half a million barrels a day for lubricants or something like that?
It was 100,000 barrels a day get used just for like lubrication. So like motor oil, WD-40, stuff like that. 100,000 barrels per day.
And the US is used to produce lubricants.
Mm-hmm. But 60 million. Woohoo!
Fantastic. Woo, yeah, that's going to help for even 3 days.
Even during the Soviet Union, the US still worked with the Soviets on back channels to purchase things like oil.
Remember when the US was a net exporter of oil? Like 5 years ago?
Yeah. Hey. Isn't that a nice idea? And then all of a sudden we all got all the exploration of domestic oil reserves got shut down. And look at that. Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. Well, we should all be using solar panels. Well, where do you think the fucking lithium for the batteries comes from?
Yeah. I've seen lithium mines.
Where do you think the uranium for the nuclear power comes from?
Actually, a lot of that comes from Colorado.
No, it comes from the Donbass region.
Yeah, but it also comes from the Rockies.
Yeah. The lithium comes from China.
The lithium also comes from across the Middle East and Africa.
Yep.
And those mines are pure slave labor.
Yep. And the U.S. military is in Central Africa right now. And has been for the last 5 or 6 years.
Always are. They've been there actually probably about the last 20-something years.
Okay.
Just in various iterations.
Support capacities.
Yeah. Support capacity.
Yeah. Advisory positions.
Advisory. There, that's the word. Keyword.
Yes.
But
advisory positions.
Yeah,
1,000
sanctions.
soldiers in advisory.
Yeah. Punitive sanctions incurred by President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine are leaving Russia economically isolated. No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's like, oh, gee, you're talking about one of the largest countries on the planet, and that has, trillions of dollars in mining available goods and growing goods and all this. Oh, but you think that because you cut off their fucking access to OnlyFans, you're going to stop them from being able to trade?
And Netflix. And they're pouring vodka down the drain that they've already purchased.
Already paid for vodka and other goods.
And they banned RT from Telegram.
Yeah, and they're not. There's those restaurants that aren't serving Russian dressing anymore.
Yeah, Jerica's gonna be so upset that she can't drink her White Russians anymore.
Yeah, from now on they're known as White Frida. Oh no,
they're white. No. Let's see. Punitive sanctions, economic isolated. Okay, it's not. Speaking of February 24th, the day of the incursion, U.S. President Joe Biden announced measures that, quote, exceed anything we've ever done. Really, bro? You like, do we need to bring up Yemen? Do we need to bring up Yemen or Venezuela, where they ate the animals in the zoo because the U.S. sanctions cut them off?
Yep.
I mean,
red lines, all that fun stuff.
Sanctions have been imposed on Russian banks, enterprises, and oligarchs, as well as on officials and other Putin allies by other countries, including the EU, Japan, Canada, Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. Those are all countries pushing the liberal collectivist ideology that Putin is against. Like, he's not going to care. All right.
And they act like they're not going to get those goods through like China or something in a backdoor kind of deal, because China doesn't support this shit.
Yeah. So, are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of February 24th, day of incursion, U.S. President Joe Biden announced measures that, quote, exceed anything we've ever done.
And I heard that. Like, no, what?
Like Yemen? Hello, there's like 1 million people starving to death.
Yeah, not just. I mean, again, Afghanistan. They did it to Afghanistan in the 90s. They did it to, they're still doing it to North Korea. They're doing it like. That's all right. Look at those countries and look at the quality of living of the average citizen in those countries and consider what that does to people.
Yeah. Russian central bank will be blocked from deploying its international reserves, and Western airspaces will be effectively closed to Russian aircraft. Okay. Tough restrictions will also be placed on the goods and services that Russian institutions and firms could purchase from the United States. The U.S. has already exported all of its fucking manufacturing to other countries.
Yeah, exactly.
What's made in the United States? Like, we got some steel in Pittsburgh. Right? Well, they can make steel overseas.
We do make processors. We do make processors. Those get made in Vermont.
If we can get the chips from Taiwan and China and Japan.
Yeah. We make beer.
Let's see. Tough restrictions in the U.S. with several big brands, including things like General Motors
almonds,
and Apple,
almond milk,
have either closed offices, paused sales, or exited the Russian market. So General Motors, okay. I mean, unless they're and IKEA has also closed offices there. So no cheap, weak ass furniture,
which is fucking hilarious considering that speaking of Nazis, IKEA used a bunch of fucking Jewish slave labor during the Holocaust.
Oops.
Yeah.
It's like when people talk about how Coca-Cola, we're going to boycott Coca-Cola because they won't shut down shipments like to Russia like Pepsi did. Dude, Coca-Cola worked with Nazi Germany until the law literally forbid them from doing it.
It could also have
where do you think Fanta came from?
Yeah.
It could also have an unintended consequence. Some experts say that Western sanctions are likely to bring Russia and China closer together economically, and they may even pose a threat to the U.S. dollar's dominance of the global financial system.
They already have, because after Visa and MasterCard shut down operations, China went, hey, we have this alternative processing system. You guys want to use that? And Russia went, okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The Bear and the Dragon, man. The Bear and the fucking Dragon. Have you not read this book? Do you know how it ends? Not well.
Yeah, I labeled this episode Bears versus Lions. Right? Because Ukraine is lions. Like Lviv, Lviv, it's literally Ukrainian for lion. So that's what we're talking about. I didn't want to put the Ukrainian in the title because, yeah. But,
the home of the Rus.
Quote, foreign economies such as Russia that still relies a great deal on export revenues and on international trade more broadly. Losing access to global financial systems is a clearly painful blow. Well, no, didn't. They didn't lose access to shit. They got kicked off of SWIFT. Okay, they made their own.
Yeah, and every country that they trade with regularly, except the United States, went okay, and set up on that too.
Yeah, except the EU, which, okay, Russia just shut off the oil pipeline to the EU.
Yeah.
Russia closed their pipeline exporting to the EU.
Yeah, they're going to starve Europe and the United States out of existence, like much more easily than we will starve them. Like that's the bottom line. Like the problem is that you're dealing with a bunch of people who are of the virtue signal culture, right? Where they think that, words are violence and that, we can, if you just yell and scream like the Trigglypuff loud and long enough that somehow you're going to affect some sort of meaningful change. They honestly believe this crap. And they're up against a guy who literally probably assassinated multiple political rivals so that he could get to where he is. Like, he doesn't fucking care.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but like he didn't wake up on Tuesday and be like, you know what, fuck it, we're invading Ukraine tomorrow. Right? That's not what happened. Like for the last 6 months, they've slowed the export of wheat. They've slowed the export of oil. They've built up large stockpiles of goods within the country. Right? They have stockpiles. Like, they knew this shit was coming, and they still did it anyway because the sanctions don't scare them.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and don't forget that, again, this has basically been ongoing since 2014. It's been 8 years this has been in the making since Euromaidan. Since Euromaidan happened, Russia has had a military presence in Donbass. They've had a military presence in Crimea. It hasn't been an overt military presence until now, but they've had a military presence and everybody knew it. And then Donbass and Crimea officially declared themselves independent, which politically makes sense because they are ethnically completely different than the rest of Ukraine and linguistically different than the rest of Ukraine and culturally different than the rest of Ukraine.
Yep.
They're on the other side of, was it the Dnieper? Was that
something like that?
The Dnieper?
Yeah. And who recognized the Donbass as a sovereign territory?
Putin
did. No one else did.
Yeah.
No, he didn't say you're part of Russia now.
I mean, could argue.
He said I recognize your sovereignty.
Well, yeah, and he could have, because I mean, historically for Russia that would track. They've annexed the Crimea at least twice and Donbass once. So like it would make sense. But that area of Ukraine on the eastern side of the Dnieper is completely different than the rest of Ukraine. So when they declared themselves independent, one, that makes sense, and two, now that they've declared themselves independent, have a functional government unto themselves, technically Putin can argue that he was asked to come in there by the local governments and
to, I don't know, protect them from the fucking Nazis and the Azov battalion.
Yeah. And can argue that he was asked to help protect their sovereignty and therefore didn't invade. He was asked in on a peacekeeping mission. And then in order to do that, and that's exactly what he's arguing, is in order to do that, he then needs to keep pushing west to get rid of the military elements that will inevitably threaten those two regions.
Which there's also another piece of that too, and it's the eastern expansion of NATO, right? You know, they NATO was created after World War II as an anti-Russian alliance, and they've been
anti-Soviet.
Anti-Soviet, yes, anti-Soviet USSR, anti-Soviet alliance, and they've been pushing east, getting closer and closer and closer, and now they've been since 2014 they've been pushing for Ukraine to be part of NATO. And the current president of Ukraine's like, yes, I want to join NATO. Like Russia can't have a NATO country on its border like that. Not of that size and power.
Well, yeah, what sparked all of the riots and everything during Euromaidan was the fact that the then president, who wound up deposed, wanted to join the EU.
Yeah,
and they didn't want to be part of the EU. Don't forget that the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic was one of the founding states of the USSR. Like, and now you're talking about having them join NATO? Of course Russia's going to flip the hell out.
Did you see that blue check mark on Twitter that we should kick Russia out of NATO?
Yeah.
Oh, Patricia Arquette. That's who it was.
Patricia Arquette. Yeah, and everyone's like, is somebody going to tell her?
Got so much shit she deleted that tweet.
It's like no wait,
but the internet never forgets.
The internet never forgets. There's screenshots everywhere. And just delete all social media, go crawl into a cave and die. No.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, you know, and then meanwhile you have blue check marks that are super rich, like fucking George Takei, who I can't stand, and he is going, oh well, you know, we can stand the higher gas prices and higher prices for commodities because
think of it, you can stand it because you got a fucking 7 and 8 digit, bank account.
Yeah, you are rich. You can stand that. The rest of us cannot.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with the sanctions against Russia is, Putin can stand it, no problem. He doesn't care. The Russian military doesn't care. The average Russian who can no longer easily buy food or earn money or anything, they care. And they don't have any power. Remember that a bunch of them are protesting right now in Moscow and in St. Petersburg and other places and are getting violently those protests are getting violently put down. They're getting arrested. They're going to jail for it. Like, what do you think you're going to do by harming those people? Nothing.
Yep. Not only that, but to bring up our surprise article that I did not tell the boys about. This is an article from defense1.com. Russia's invasion will boost the 2023 defense budget, top Democrats say.
Of course.
I am shocked. I say.
Hold on. Wait till you get it. Says Russia's invasion of Ukraine will boost the Pentagon funding next year. The chairman of the House Armed Services Committee predicted on Thursday. Quote, without question, it's going to have to be bigger than we thought. That is Representative Adam Smith, Democrat out of Washington. Quote, the Russian invasion of Ukraine fundamentally altered what our national security posture and what our defense posture needs to be. It made it more difficult and it made it more expensive. I don't see much way to argue it. Yes, I agree. During annual budget negotiations, Republicans typically push for more defense spending, while Democrats overwhelmingly argue to cut the military and increase spending on domestic programs. But the bipartisan support for Ukraine could unite both parties around a higher defense budget. Quote,
what a surprise.
Quote, the political reality is that the Russian incursion in Ukraine has created much more support for an increase in the defense budget. At a minimum,
while going, shucks.
At a minimum, I think Democrats won't oppose it because it's hard to, politically, at this point, given what we're seeing. That is from Todd Harrison, Director for Budget Analysis at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Yeah.
In December, Congress authorized nearly $778 billion for defense spending in fiscal 2022, which began October 1st, though lawmakers have yet to pass a budget to disperse that money. The Biden administration is expected to submit a 2023 budget request this month. Sources familiar with the negotiations told Reuters the request would include more than $800 billion for overall defense spending, including the $773 billion for the Defense Department.
$800 billion.
Yes.
With a B.
With a B.
$billion. I can't even wrap my head around that much money.
Yeah. 800 billion. That's 80% of a trillion.
You know, and here's the thing is that the United States government does not, in fact, have $800 billion to spend. They are $30 trillion in the hole. And who are they mostly in debt to?
China. Well,
China.
Technically, they're mostly in debt to the Federal Reserve System.
Well, yes,
because the Federal Reserve Bank holds most of the U.S. debt, but China is the largest foreign holder.
So what happens, pray tell, to the United States when China decides that they're going to get real bosom buddy with Russia, and they're going to go ahead and call all that debt in?
Well, that's funny you should mention that, because there's a paragraph here. It says, but the money would also likely to go buy weapons, aircraft, ships, and submarines to make sure the military can deter both Russia and China.
The people that we're borrowing money from.
Yes.
I mean, this is the equivalent of going to your next door neighbor and going, hey man, can I borrow like $1,500? And he's like, for what? And you're like, oh, you'll see. And then he gives you the $1,500, and then you buy a gun with it and a bunch of ammo. And he goes, you bought a gun and ammo? What did you buy the gun and ammo for? Well, in case you ask for the $1,500 back.
Yeah. Quote, now Congress and the DOD, instead of looking at the overall force structure in terms of being able to meet one major theater war at a time, they're now forced to look at two almost simultaneous wars, and that is going to drive a lot more of an increase in demand for force structure.
How has that worked out for countries historically?
Oh my goodness!
Recent memory, the multi-front war thing.
Well, you remember when Afghanistan was fighting the U.S. and the Taliban at the same time?
Yeah, they were fighting. They weren't fighting the U.S. and the Taliban at the same time. They were fighting themselves.
The Taliban were fighting the U.S. and the Afghan National Army.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then and how that went. You remember how that went for, I don't know, say Germany in World War I and World War II, or Austro-Hungary in World War I, or the Ottoman Empire in World War I. You noticing a trend here?
The Roman Empire,
Carthage. You think maybe the Mongol Empire, the Japanese in World War II. You're seeing a trend here, I think, with how well that works.
It doesn't work well.
Yeah, you can't really do it.
No.
Unless you have a massive domestic manufacturing infrastructure, an incredibly strong economy.
Which
we don't.
Right. And, interestingly, Germany
also,
World War II.
Hold on. Also, the U.S. is a net importer of food. About half of the food consumed in the United States is imported from other countries. So not only do we not have a manufacturing infrastructure or a strong economy, we don't have a domestic food production enough to keep up with U.S. needs.
So, what's interesting is there's another country that had to fight a multi-front war recently that also had not enough manufacturing infrastructure or steel or oil or food. It was in this region in like middle of Europe. It's run by some guy, Adolf something or other.
Yeah.
It went well for them, I hear. Real well.
Yeah, real well.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
But on that note, Biden administration courts Venezuela as Russian economy takes hits from sanctions. Senior U.S. officials traveled to South America as some suggest Venezuelan imports could replace those from Russia.
The actual communist country. That one. The one that murdered a bunch of its citizens recently.
The actual communist country under U.S. sanctions. It's comical. It's so fucking sad. It's comical, and I'm trying. It's not a real laughing matter. What's coming? It's not a real laughing matter. But no. I have to laugh. I have to laugh in order to deal with this.
In order to not cry.
Oh,
I mean, you're willing.
Venezuela was under U.S. sanctions so bad that people chased down zoo animals and beat them to death with rocks so that they would have something to eat.
And not just the prey animals. These people attacked lions and tigers with sticks. They were so hungry, and they won.
There was an international outcry because one of the tigers in the zoo starved to death. I don't know if you guys remember that. But I 2 years ago.
Yeah, I vaguely remember. Yeah,
one of the tigers starved to death because the zoo couldn't afford to feed it. The zoo couldn't afford to feed it because the country's fought. These are the people that fought inflation. They fought inflation by literally taking the inflation number and like cutting off 4 zeros.
Yeah, they just removed zeros, which they did twice. By the way.
Like the inflation numbers were so bad that the point of sales, the point of sale machines, like only hold 10 digits. Right? So they just cut 4 zeros off the prices of everything in order to be able to fit them on the point of sale, be able to fit the price on the point of sale machine. Like the U.S. sanctions did this.
Remove it.
And now we're going, well, and don't forget, like, this is the country that the U.S. was celebrating the uprising by the citizens against their draconian government and their authoritarian government, and, and decrying the violent crackdowns against the protests, the anti-government protests and things.
Yeah.
And so the U.S. cut them off from oil, instilled all these sanctions because of it. And now we're looking at lifting those sanctions and engaging in trade with them because the bald guy over there attacked a bunch of Nazis.
It's like Toy Story when he drops Woody. I don't want to play with you anymore.
Yeah.
Well, now Buzz Lightyear is boring, and now he wants to pick up the old dusty, beaten up Woody and play with Woody again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Several senior Biden administration officials from the White House and the State Department traveled to Venezuela on Saturday to meet with the Russian ally as Moscow's economy begins to cater under the weight of the sanctions, according to the report. The U.S. is hoping to capitalize on Russia's economic weaknesses 3 years after the Kremlin, along with China and Iran, came to Venezuela's financial aid when the Trump administration cut diplomatic ties with Caracas and opposed sanctions on oil exports in the Latin American country amid Western accusations of an illegitimate election.
Oh, that is rich. That is rich.
Authoritarian President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela was accused by the U.S. and the West of election fraud in 2019, with the White House recognizing opposition leader Juan Guaido as the real president. Current U.S. officials hope to pull Caracas further away from Moscow after Venezuela has already distanced itself from Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, according to the report.
You know who else condemned Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine? The fucking Taliban. They said, can't you guys just talk this out peacefully?
That
Oh my
was
God.
great.
Hey, they're fucking terrible people too, but man, are they wonderful trolls. And it's just fucking amazing.
I just saw that and I was so big.
That was George W. Bush put out a statement on Twitter too about condemning the unsanctioned wars or something like that.
Unjustified
or
invasion.
unjustified invasions. Yeah, that was it.
And everyone's like,
what? The ghost of Saddam Hussein's like, what? What's going on?
the fuck is this?
Yeah, it's all clown show, bro. It's all fucking clown show.
Oh man, we live in
clown world.
Hong Kong.
Yeah.
It's except that it's gonna end with all of the clown noses melting in nuclear fucking fire.
Maduro, in a speech on Thursday, said, quote, "Here lies the oil of Venezuela, which is available to whomever wants to produce and buy it, be it an investor from Asia, Europe, or the United States." No.
Well, one, of course, Venezuela wants money from the United States. They don't have any, and boy, would that be helpful. So
it's like it's $1 US can buy like a county down there.
Yeah. Let's see, what is the Venezuelan? Let's see, Venezuelan.
Is it a peso?
Currency? Let's see, Venezuelan currency to US dollar is 436,272 to 1.
It's like that scene in Eurotrip when they're in Bratislava.
Yeah, with the nickel.
Bratislava.
Nickel. You see this? I buy my hotel. Whack.
Yeah, I have a nickel. That's. Oh my God. So, like, what I'm hearing is that if I was going to found my own oil company to become wildly rich, now is the time to do it and go set up in Venezuela, because my next paycheck from work will probably pay for it there.
Oh, yeah.
Which is funny because isn't that like historically that's what the US does in Central and South America, right? It destroys the economies and the governments, and then it moves in so that all the business interests in the US can take over and be like, oh, well, I mean, you guys weren't doing anything with this anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then just take over. Like that's been the pattern since Teddy Roosevelt.
Let's see. Yep. According to Numbeo, Numbeo, the cost of living for Ukraine or for Venezuela, it costs about 90 cents US for a 12-ounce bottle of water. So 90 cents US is what, like 400,000 Venezuelan?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
that's about, what is that? That's probably the same thing would be what, $2 here roughly?
Maybe.
So it's, cost you about half as much to build shit there. But the labor would be infinitely cheaper because no one can afford anything right now. So anything is. And that's how the US works, especially in Central and South America. That's how it's always worked. That's how we got the Panama Canal built.
A three-bedroom apartment in the city in Caracas is $500 US a month. Oh,
it's a little cheaper than around here.
Yep. Average monthly salary after taxes is about $230 US. So that tells you. $72 per square foot for an apartment in the city.
What is it in California?
I wish. California costs more than that. No, but I don't know. That was just, I don't know. That made me laugh. Venezuela. I mean, it's one of those things like the Russian sanctions hit hard, right? But the U.S. and to stop oil export or stop oil imports from Russia, it would crash the economy. It would crash the U.S. economy, right? I mean, 20% less fuel to the United States, while increasing the interest rates on borrowing. And you're just the economy is just going to go. It's like Wile E. Coyote, hitting the wall that looks like a tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Right, just right into that fucking rock, and it's that part scares me. That part scares me.
Oh yeah, I mean, and look at what happens. As soon as there's a flood, as soon as there's something that prevents people from being able to get necessities in cities. Look at what happens with the looting and everything else almost immediately. Within less than 5 hours of a major disaster, there's looting and stuff. What do you think is going to happen when all of the sudden you can't get anything? Nobody can afford anything.
Well, that's
already
that was one of the things that the Federal Reserve has been talking about, and the experts have been talking about in terms of the inflation that we have in the United States. The only real way, according to them, to stop inflation is to make the price of things to the point that people stop running out and buying it. Yeah. Right? You have to kill demand in order to quit rising the prices, right? Because there's only a finite amount of XYZ, right? So as long as people are demanding it, then the prices are going to go up for this thing. But you get to the point where you price it out of people's purchasing power, it's going to kill the demand, and eventually those prices will come back down to meet actual inflation.
Yeah. Well, right? I mean, we even see that in the very short term with, for instance, with the video game systems, because of the ultra shortness of supply, where the prices skyrocketed, and now everyone has gone, well, I can't afford that. That's ridiculous. I guess I'll just stick with.
Yeah, the PS5s were selling on eBay for $1,000 and shit.
Yeah, the Xbox One X's you still basically can't get. Hey, I play Xbox. the One X or not the One X, but the Series X you can't get in most places at all. And if you can, they want $800 or $900 for what was supposed to be a $500 system. Well, everybody kind of went, well, my Xbox One is still supported and I can still play perfectly fine games on there. I guess I'll just do without. And so now all of a sudden all these retailers are having to dump their prices back down steadily because no one's buying them because, well, I can't afford that. I've learned to live without it now. And, and what's going to happen here in the very near future is all of us who are hoarders and preppers and things, we're all suddenly going to be vindicated in very short order for why we hoarded all this stuff. Like a bunch of y'all are about to learn why your grandmothers and great grandmothers hoarded, held on to like tinfoil and shit. You're going to learn the hard way why that happened.
Yep. But on the flip side, once those go into a glut, the aftermarket will blow up, and that will be fantastic.
Oh yeah, and the black market is going to get fucking glorious. Like I'm already planning my little storefront.
The AK-12s, I'm just saying.
Dude, even look at
AK Daddy did a video today on the AK-12. Oh man.
Oh, they're nice. Yeah,
they're nice.
But I mean, even this, right? When I got this, I traded what was a $600 gun when I bought it for this.
Yeah, the
plus a shit ton of mags and a ton of ammo.
The KSG, right? Or no, not the KSG.
Well, I traded the KSG for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was about a $600 gun new when it was first purchased. Trade it for that, and I get that and a huge stack of mags and a great big ammo box packed full of like 1,000 rounds of ammo. All of that with it for a $600 gun. Yep. Those are retailing for $1,000 now with one mag.
But on that note, Ukrainian authorities say citizens don't need to declare captured Russian tanks and military equipment for tax purposes.
Be right back. Heading to Ukraine.
Loot drops.
Loot drop. Yeah, Ukrainian authorities have reassured citizens that they don't need to declare captured Russian tanks or any equipment they pick up as personal income. Quote, have you captured a Russian tank or armored personnel carrier and are worried about how to declare it? Keep calm and continue to defend the motherland, a statement that is from Ukrainian National Agency on Corruption Prevention, sent by the Interfax Ukraine said. Quote, there is no need to declare that captured Russian tank or other equipment because the cost of this does not exceed 100 living wages.
Like, it's cheap shit. Fuck it. No one cares.
On the agency's website, a document dated Monday said that the seizure of tanks and equipment would be considered, quote, a manifestation of the unity and cohesion of the Ukrainian people in the fight against invaders and would not be taxable.
So they just went full on medieval. Spoils of fucking war.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
BRB, need to go get myself a T-72.
right after I saw this article, I saw the YouTube videos of Ukrainians showing
I'm just
to
saying
run
I'm just saying
and start
shit
these
exists.
APCs. So anybody out there can sit there and watch the video like, okay, this switch first, this button first.
Well, yeah, you just basically you gotta make sure it's in neutral, flip the magnetos on, make sure the fuel pump is on, and hit start.
Nope.
There are no keys in military vehicles, people. They don't use keys.
Nope.
There's that would be counterproductive because keys get lost, especially by idiots who drive vehicles. Because
Grunts.
they're just they're not grunts, but they're practically grunts. So they're not bright. They tend to lose things. So there's no keys. So all you got to do is get in and boom. Yay.
Quote, thanks to the courage and victory of the defenders of the Ukrainian state, hostile military equipment, weapons, and other armor arrive as scrap. It is impossible to evaluate such objects in accordance with the laws of Ukraine. That is fucking just fantastic. That is just that. Yeah.
If you wanted to support, if the U.S. truly wanted to support the Ukrainian people without like being jackasses to the Russians, they could simply say, hey, look, we're going to lift any restrictions on the import of military hardware of any variety from the Ukraine. And at that point, Russian AKs, AK-74s, can you imagine picking up a Russian manufactured full auto AK-74 SU?
AK-12 only dropped once.
Yeah, like, and just like, oh, you know what? I feel like picking up some. I'm gonna go pick up some down to the hardware store, and there's a military surplus.
A case of Spam cans, Andrew. Just a case of Spam cans.
Do you know how much this little fucker cost me? You know how nice that would be to be able to just have an entire case of this shit for next to nothing. I mean, like, imagine what could happen. You could have.
I'm not rock hard right now, but I'm on the way.
You could like be driving around in an MBT and just be like, yeah, check it out. This is my new T-72. What do you think?
Just boogaloo suave squat with a fucking AK-12.
Oh man. I saw there was a picture a guy posted where he'd recovered an AS Val off of a Spetsnaz.
Oh, the Val, yes.
Oh my god. I stared at that and I'm like, oh, you lucky bastard.
Yes.
Do you know what I would pay for a fucking AS Val?
What's the line? I'd give an arm and a leg for it. I mean, not my arm or leg, but I could acquire one and
I could definitely get an arm and a leg. Yeah, I'd trade that.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can find something.
Yeah. Well, are you kidding me? To have an AS Val, like, oh my god, that would be amazing.
Just
guys, check out my new tank and my Val.
The surplus market, like 5 years from now, it's just going to be
cheap Russian military uniforms, slightly bloody, must be washed, minor holes,
must patch,
air conditioning.
Vent holes.
Dude, that's what you do if you were like, no, we're going to support, like, just allow Ukrainians to just ship enormous amounts of Russian military hardware that they've captured to the US into the civilian market. But they won't do that because they know what will immediately happen with all of that equipment suddenly being in the United States. Hey, what'd you get? Oh, I headed down to the military surplus store and picked up a couple of Iglas. And
well, you remember the stories of like 10 or 15 years ago, before Obama, when people would walk into a gun show and leave with a case and a Gantz? Right? You remember those stories? That's what I'm hoping happens. I mean, it won't happen, but that's what I'm hoping happens.
Oh yeah, if the NFA was repealed tomorrow, and they then also allowed full imports from the Ukraine of military hardware, you would see so many AKs to show up. It would be insane.
Be glorious.
All at once. Absolutely glorious.
Are you trying to make me drool, Andrew?
I'm just, hey man, I'm just having my own fantasy over here.
Yes. As my patch says, keep your rifle by your side. The manifestation of unity and cohesion of Ukrainians.
I call it the manifestation of cohesion and unity of all peoples as you sell me your armored personnel carrier you acquired. Have you seen the video of that farmer, by the way, stealing that APC? That is the funniest fucking thing, where like it had run out of fuel, so like the troops dismounted and walked away from it so no one was near it. So he just backs up to it, hooks up some chains, and drives away with it. And this one soldier's like, hey, what do you do? And he's just like, nope, it's mine now, bitch.
there's a never ask a woman her age, never ask a man his salary, never ask a Ukrainian farmer where he got his anti-aircraft system.
It ain't much, but it's honest work. I mean, right now it feels like the Russians are kind of invading South Central. Like where they just, if they leave their vehicles unattended, they come back and there's just parts missing and like they're gone.
That was the line
up on blocks, treads gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was the line in Triple X2 with Ice Cube. Right, they put the high lifts underneath the tank. Well, they're the first tank jacket in history.
Yep.
Well, there was the second.
Yeah, right there. I mean, I'm just, man, can you imagine if like if you had the gangs of Chicago and Los Angeles and shit, like head over there and just like these Russians would walk into like go get a meal here, come back out, and there's just like the frame of a vehicle left. Everything's gone. What the hell?
Fucking popping tracks. But speaking of weapons, memes become weapons in the Ukraine-Russian conflict.
They've always been weapons.
It's an article from ABC News that says, typically used for fun on social media, memes out of Ukraine are serious business amid Russia's attack. In fact, history and media experts who spoke with ABC News said the social media posts about Ukraine's resistance against Russian forces are war tools. That's what we're talking about now. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about memes are war tools.
Intercontinental ballistic memes.
Yes.
ICBMs.
Yes. Jennifer Graygill, associate professor of communications at Syracuse University, who specializes in social media and memes. Told ABC News that social media campaigns undertaken by big governments or grassroots groups are critical in gaining worldwide support. Quote, that's how warfare is conducted in the information space. It's about narrative and the public belief. Propaganda. Right? That's what me and Biting the Bullet Boys, Typo and Luke talked about, was propaganda. But as social media warfare heats up, Graygill and other experts say the world needs to be on high alert and prevent spreading false information. U.S. and European officials also say that Russian government began using social media videos in the last couple of months to plant false flag stories that bolster Putin's claim his invasion is legitimate. This from the same social media, the Ghost of Kiev and the Snake Island, and those things totally happened.
Yeah.
U.S. and European officials also say the Russian government. I just read that paragraph. In one video posted in February, Russian-backed separatists claimed they were ordering a quote a immediate evacuation to Russia because of the unrest in Ukraine. But metadata embedded in the files showed they had been created 2 days earlier. So, let's see. V.S. Subrahaman, a faculty fellow at Northwestern University's Buffett Institute for Global Affairs and Cybersecurity expert, said that these tactics aren't new. He said during World War II, Western and Nazi forces would airdrop leaflets on the battlefield and in towns to promote their respective countries and to intimidate their enemy.
Well, don't forget during Vietnam, the Hanoi Jane, and there was an American that did the radio broadcasts in Germany during World War II. This is not new. This isn't even remotely new. This isn't even remotely unique. It's just that the type of media has changed.
The type of media. I mean, if you go all the way back to our Revolutionary War, right? Ben Franklin, the newspaper guy, huge into propaganda, right? He's the one, right? Instead of just doing the newsletter about the Boston Massacre, they actually had a tintype done so that they could stamp this painting on the leaflets that they handed out, right? Because words or pictures paint things that words can't explain. So, like, propaganda is powerful. Propaganda can completely change a person's opinion because it appeals to an emotion.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Sam Adams was really good at that. Was it Horace Greeley? Horace Greeley, his newspaper was really good at that. I mean, Thomas Paine and his leaflets, the Common Sense, that was a propaganda type thing that, on the same level as any other propaganda would be later in history. You see a ton of that throughout history where you see during World War II, the keep calm and carry on stuff. And, the World War I with the Kitchener's Army with the I want you that then gets repurposed by American World War II with Uncle Sam and the same thing, the I want you. And this is stuff that,
well, not only that, but like all the way back to like, you can even bring in like the Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Victory Gardens and, go to propaganda media like Captain America, right? Captain America on tour selling war bonds. You go to the movie Red Dawn where they have the people at the drive-in, right? The re-education camps, right? The stuff that's playing on the screen and over the loudspeakers. That's no different. Same thing.
Well, yeah. It's. I mean, is kind of as old as war itself.
Toby Keith's fucking stupid ass patriotic songs.
Yeah. Ugh. Well, even going back, I mean, you have that going back to ancient Egypt, ancient Sumeria, where they would have these huge carvings talking about how great their victories were and all these amazing things they did, and you'd have all of that going back. Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul is one big propaganda pamphlet about how great Caesar is. Like this is a pretty common thing that's been done as long as warfare has happened. It's just that now, instead of being in the hands of regular propagandists who are working for the government in concerted efforts and things, it's tons of people have access to this.
Yep. Christopher's listening. Take care of the baby. So he's not going to be joining us. So, bummer. But
I think it's just mainstream media is mad that everybody has access to propaganda now.
They're getting outdone.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, and the false flag thing has been around forever too with propaganda. I mean, you have Hitler, World War II with the Polish or
remember the Twitter report? It was like the media kept saying that the Russia's going to invade, Russia's going to invade on XYZ at this time. And then the Russian Twitter on the day that it happens at that time, they post a GIF, and it's John Travolta looking around. Where is everybody? Right?
Yeah, and the official Russian Twitter posted a thing that said the Russian embassy would like to request a list of all of the times and dates that it's going to be invading Ukraine, so that its diplomats may schedule vacations accordingly. It was, I mean, but that's, I mean, Hitler, he used propaganda to try and proclaim that there was, in this anti-Polish propaganda to justify his invasion of Poland, and that supposedly they'd attacked a radio station. The British used a lot of propaganda. One of my favorites is still their campaign to convince everybody that the reason that their fighter pilots always seemed to intercept the Germans during the Battle of Britain was they ate a lot of carrots and it was really good for their eyesight. Arguably the most successful propaganda campaign in history, because people still think carrots are good for your eyesight and it's a load of horseshit. It was literally invented to cover for the existence of radar. It's like, that's the kind of thing that, that you see throughout the history of warfare. Now it's just been propagated to a whole bunch of people, and thousands and thousands of people can put memes out and things. It's just that half of us are just shit posters.
Yeah, so they talk about it like the U.S. military has like a whole branch, right? They talk about it in Afghanistan, winning hearts and minds. That's where they did things like, water projects and built schools and all this other stuff. It was like it was hearts and minds, right? That's what they were trying to do. That was the propaganda. They wanted the people on their side, and it didn't really work, but they tried real hard.
Well, yeah, and like our docs would help like local kids and stuff and people who are sick and things. And that's what we do a lot of, is to try and convince them that, we're the good guys. You want us around. You don't want those guys around. You want us. See, look at how good we are. We'd over publicize and overhype everything we did and
then we leave in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And leave behind $86 billion worth of equipment for them.
Yeah, and like, see, look at how good we are. Oh shit! Whoops.
Yeah. We blew up that school with indiscriminate bombing, but we built you this new one. Look how cool
we built you a new
one.
We
just ignore the burn pit that's where the hospital used to be.
Yeah. See, now you have a new one with an even bigger parking lot, because we just paved over the debris of the last.
Yeah,
one.
Your kid has birth defects from our depleted uranium rounds, but those other guys wouldn't have let him go to school.
Yeah, we may have slaughtered the entire wedding of one of your close family members, but the other guys wouldn't have even let them get married. So,
yeah. What's happening today is these leaflets are now tweets or Facebook posts or posts on TikTok, and they are sowing the disinformation campaign long before an invasion tactics. Yeah, that's. Information is everything.
Well, and this is the exact same thing that Russia did in 2014. Remember, they had tons of disinformation, and they had, these, not above board actors in Ukraine who were putting all this stuff out. And this is what has always happened. And most recently in Ukraine, this is what happened in 2014, and Ukraine and Russia's just doing the same thing again that it just did just 8 years ago. Worked then, it's going to work again, and it is working again. It'd probably work better if they had encrypted radios. That is so fucking great. I love that. I don't know if you're aware of this, but apparently the entire Russian army is using civilian Baofeng radios to communicate, unencrypted.
They're using FRS.
Yes, because it turns out that even though there was this big thing about them getting all these new digital encrypted radios a few years ago, whatever oligarch was in charge of that bought a bunch of standard civilian unencrypted analog Baofeng radios, gave those out, and then pocketed the difference. So now we have this bizarre situation where anyone who wants to at any given time can listen into the online scanners of the Russian military and know exactly where the entire Russian military is at any given moment. And civilians are able to construct jammers from plans on the internet and set them up and just jam all of their radio traffic for miles.
I have a half dozen of those in my preps. I can set up my 25 and put out some disinformation myself.
Oh, it'd be hilarious. I've heard recordings of Russians like crying about being attacked by these civilians and stuff, and these irregular Ukrainian forces. And I don't really speak Russian, but I get enough of the gist of things to understand, like, especially when the dude's actually sobbing into the radio. Like, it's it's so bizarre because you're listening to it in real time. You can hear the gunfire in the background there, and like it's completely unencrypted.
Now, speaking of information propaganda, I haven't seen many videos of actual street fighting.
I've seen a bit.
I've seen them from one side. Like I've seen, like there's a really good video where the guy steps out, fires the RPG, right? But you pan that, if that video, when that video comes back in, there's like a brand new printer still in the box sitting right there, and some other stuff, and I haven't seen like what with Iraq and Afghanistan, soldiers were constantly posting videos of actual combat. I haven't seen much actual combat footage.
I haven't seen a lot. I've seen some from a couple of news sources. Sky News had that pretty intense ambush that was kind of their fault because they got a warning shot from a Russian checkpoint, continued to drive because they couldn't figure out what the very obvious tracer was that was shot at them, started getting shot up. And then instead of they didn't know the Russian word for journalist. Like at one point, the chick goes, "Journalista." Yeah, that sounds Russian.
They're practicing for Venezuela.
It's journalistia. Journalistia. Why is that hard? It even sounds a lot like journalist, but just with a Russian-y sounding end to it. Like, it's not
maybe they did understand, and that's why they were firing at them.
Yeah, probably. They're like, "Fuck these guys." But
legacy media.
Like they're driving towards an obvious check.
It should be podcasters.
Yeah. Oh, you're definitely dying. But like they're driving towards an obvious checkpoint, an obvious tracer, and that's why you use tracers for that, is because you fire in front of the vehicle. It's very obvious it's a tracer. It's very obvious.
Or the 40-40s, the 40 Mike smoke rounds.
Yeah, like
is what they use a lot in Iraq.
Yeah, you know that you're being shot at and told to stop. The proper procedure to any reasonable human being is go, "Oh shit," slam on your brakes, stop, get out of the car with your hands in the air, say, "Hey, no, we're journalists," point out the big press on your vest and everything, and get through the checkpoint. Instead, they continue to drive and debate whether or not it was something under the car, start getting shot at, stop, stay in the car, start yelling the word journalist in Spanish at these Russian troops as they continue to get machine gunned. And you can tell that the Russian troops are just trying to get them out of the car because it's quick little bursts, just quick occasional bursts, trying to get them out of the car. And then they make a break for it and go up and over this embankment and go hide. And it's like, you wouldn't have needed to do that if you just followed what obviously you should have done, which is go, "Oh shit, I'm being shot at. Hey, wait, I'm just a journalist." That's obviously what you should have. I've seen that, and it's pretty intense ambush footage. I haven't seen much good first-person ambush footage like that. But I've seen that. Beyond that, you get a little bit over balconies and stuff looking down at gunfights, but that's kind of it. No one from on the ground is posting anything.
Yeah. Which kind of, I don't know. The propagandist in me, the militant in me is kind of like, I want some.
I mean, I'm really curious. I'm actually disappointed that Headstamp didn't publish that book, because that would have been interesting, whether it's written by a Nazi or not. It's going to be an interesting account.
Facebook is supporting Nazis. So, I mean, not Nazis are the new hotness.
Maybe they should try again to publish it, and everyone will be like, "But they're brave, brave fighters for Ukraine."
Yeah, put an Azov Battalion logo on the front.
Yeah, and everyone will be like, "Oh,
it'll go to Amazon bestseller." You can buy an Azov Battalion shirt on Amazon.
Two separate ones, actually.
Two different ones, yeah.
Yeah. The Photoshop I did of Nazi Edward Norton with Azov insignia instead of the swastika. Yeah, I cut that Azov logo off of one of the t-shirts from Amazon. Like like that is, and I posted on my Twitter, I'm like, "Hey Amazon, you want to explain why you have Nazi pro-Nazi stuff on Amazon right now?"
I'm not making memes, I'm making propaganda. I'm helping the war effort. What's
helping?
The line from Starship Troopers? "I'm doing my part," and they step on the bugs.
Yeah, I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part. I'm a propagandist.
I'm throwing memes out there, man. And it's memes that say both sides of it sucks. So it's
all right. Let's get into the serious one, I guess. Ukraine war follows decades of warnings that NATO expansion into Eastern Europe could provoke Russia.
What a surprise that maybe an organization specifically created to fight them being expanded to their borders might make them kind of provoked.
Now, this is an article from theconversation.com. As fighting rages across Ukraine, two versions of reality that underlie the conflict stare across a deep divide, neither conceding any truth to the other. The more widespread and familiar view in the West, particularly in the United States, is that Russia is and always has been an expansionist state, and its current president, Vladimir Putin, is the embodiment of the essential Russian ambition, quote, to build a new Russian empire. Quote, this was always about naked aggression, about Putin's desire for empire by any means necessary. That's a quote from Joe Biden, by the way.
Yes.
The opposing view argues that Russia's security concerns are in fact genuine, and that NATO expansion eastward is seen by Russians as directed against their country. Putin has been clear for many years that if continued, the expansion would likely be met with serious resistance by the Russians, even with military action. That perspective isn't held just by Russians. Some influential American foreign policy experts have subscribed to it as well. Among others, Biden's CIA director, William J. Burns, has been warning about the provocative effect of NATO expansion on Russia since 1995. That when Burns, then a political officer for the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, reported on the Washington that, quote, hostility to early NATO expansion is almost always universally felt across the domestic political spectrum here. No shit. No, but the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, is a military alliance that was formed by the U.S., Canada, and several European nations in 1949 to contain the USSR and the spread of communism.
Ironic, since we now live in a fucking communist country.
Yeah. Not only do we now live in a communist country, but Russia's not communist.
Yeah. They're not. Well, I mean, I guess I would call us fascist.
They're a capitalist fascist-ish sort of thing, right? Not a whole lot different than the United States. More authoritarian, but the economy is very similar.
Well, and you got to remember
closer to China's.
Yeah, well, you got to remember too that Russian history, the Russians historically do not go very long without a strong leader just going, I'm in charge. Like that never seems to, there never seems to be a gap there where there's simultaneously stability in Russia and not a strong leader. That's very, very rare that happens.
Yeah.
If at all, really.
You know, strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. Bad times create strong men.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, because, you know, you have, starting with Peter the Great, you know, you have the Romanov dynasty, and they're all a bunch of very strong autocratic leaders that have kind of coalesced Russia into the Russian Empire. And then that falls to the Soviets, and you have, you know, the October Revolution and in 1917, and then that's, you know, a bunch of very strong authoritarian leadership. And
finish your story. Listen, I'm going to go take a piss.
Oh, okay. And then you have the early 90s, right? After the fall of communism in 91. And it's like, okay, who's in charge of Russia? Like, I guarantee you, I challenge anybody to be able to name a single person who was in charge of Russia between the fall of communism in 91 and Vladimir Putin. You can't, because nobody remembers, and it was super unstable. I mean, there's that joke in the movie Canadian Bacon that Michael Moore did, where they're like, why don't we call over to Russia and see who's in charge this week? Like, it's there's nobody, you know, there's nothing left, and for stability, and you have like this massive rise of, you know, of the Russian mob and everything else, and you have all these people vying for control, and then Putin takes over. and things have at least stabilized under Putin. But for whatever reason, Russia doesn't seem to ever not want like an authoritarian regime. Like they seem to do better with an authoritarian regime. I don't know if it's because they were serfs way later into history than and really medieval way later into history than everybody else just about in Europe. But I mean that doesn't make sense because Japan was also full of serfs and stuff into the until the 1860s. Yeah. So I don't know why that is, but that's just one of those things where like the Russians just need somebody to be this authoritarian that just dictates, and they seem to not like it when they don't have one.
Yeah. Well, they have that old cultural thing going on. Like you see touches of it in some like history shows and movies, like Vikings and stuff, where they do the Viking crossover to the Russians and stuff, where somebody takes over and has to run it. You just kind of see that in their culture going way back when too. It's something that's ingrained in their DNA, I guess.
Yeah, that's something that Putin has talked about, and it was the Russian culture, and that's one of the reasons, according to him, that he invaded Ukraine was to stop the Western expansion of the liberal ideology, or the Eastern expansion of liberal ideology, right? You see what that's done to the U.S., right? While Russia was invading Ukraine, the U.S. Army was teaching people how to use pronouns. Right? Why would he want that sort of mentality to infest Russia?
Well, yeah, and I mean Russia's always been different than everybody else. Like it always has. I mean, you look at when Catherine the Great or her predecessor Elizabeth. We're not going to count Peter because fuck Peter. He was a moron.
Most of them are,
but. Yeah, well, but I mean, Piotr was especially a more like because I mean, there's a reason Catherine wound up able to take the throne from her husband so easily and stuff. But you look at Catherine the Great, you look at Elizabeth, you look at Peter the Great, Elizabeth's grandfather, and throughout the Romanov dynasty, you just have very, very strong personalities constantly. They're ruling autocratically, and most of it while the rest of Europe is progressing, because like by the time you get to Catherine the Great, you're in the 19th century, 18th century, in the 18th century, right? So every other country is starting to democratize, and they're starting to move away from this stuff, and meanwhile you still have a medieval, like you have serfs. And serfs can be like taken away by the monarch and things from these nobles and granted to someone else, and like you still have that feudal medieval system in Russia into the 18th century. Like it says a lot that they just didn't see a reason to change, I think, culturally, as they watched all these other countries change, and they just didn't.
Yeah. Now the view of the West is no longer an anti-Russian alliance, but instead of a kind of collective security agreement aimed at protecting its members from outside aggression and promoting peaceful mediation of conflicts within the alliance. Recognizing the sovereignty of all states and their right to ally with whoever they wish, NATO ascended over time to the request of European democracies to join the alliance. Former members of the Soviet-established Warsaw Pact, which was kind of a Soviet version of NATO, were also brought into the NATO in the 1990s, along with 3 former Soviet republics, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, in 2004. The Western view is that the Kremlin is supposed to understand and accept that the alliance's activities, among them the war games to complete with the American tank stage in nearby Baltic states, a rocket station in Poland and Romania, which the U.S. says are armed at Iran, in no way present a threat to Russian security.
We have a shit ton of tanks and missiles and fighters and strategic bombers. They were just flying strategic bombers, B-52
fucking B-52s, man,
over Eastern Europe. Like, oh, but don't worry, that's not a threat to you.
Yeah, B-52s don't drop, firecrackers, man.
Yeah, no, they're strategic bombers. They were built to carry nuclear fucking weapons.
Yep. Russian elite and broad public opinion have both long been opposed to the expansion, the placement of American rockets in Poland and Romania, and the arming of Ukraine with Western weaponry. There's another article from the Washington Post that was recently came out, and it was declassified information due to a Freedom of Information Act request. That started in December, the Biden administration was arming Ukraine.
Yeah, it was throwing a bunch of weaponry to them.
Yeah,
which is a direct violation for Ukraine as well of
Yes.
Minsk. Like, well, Minsk
Yes.
and Minsk too, and it's not like Ukraine has ever adhered to Minsk either time, but like, which is the other thing you need to keep in mind about this.
So this was Biden arming it in December, right? We already talked about Obama arming it in 2014. President Bill Clinton's administration moved to bring Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic into NATO. Burns wrote that the decision was, quote, premature at best and needlessly provocative at worst.
Yeah, that's
so.
You don't need to bring Baltic states in. That's NATO should have been abolished in '91 when the Iron Curtain fell. That should have been the end of NATO.
Yes.
That should have allowed that to just dissolve as a direct result of that, because the Eastern Bloc no longer existed in the same way, and there was no more Warsaw Pact, so there should be no more NATO. The fact that NATO still exists, it's like, why?
Yep. Okay.
There's no need for that.
Here's a good one. In June 1997, right, this is 6 years after the wall fell, 50 prominent foreign policy experts signed an open letter to Bill Clinton saying, quote, we believe that the current U.S.-led effort to expand NATO is a policy error of historic proportions that would unsettle European stability. That was 25 years ago when that letter was written, 1997. So,
isn't it funny how a quarter century later they've been proven completely correct?
In 2008, the American ambassador to Moscow wrote to Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, quote, Ukrainian entry into NATO is the brightest of all the red lines for the Russian elite, not just Putin. In more than 2.5 years of conversations with key Russian players, from knuckle draggers in the dark recesses of the Kremlin to Putin's sharpest liberal critics, I have yet to find anyone who views Ukraine and NATO as anything other than a direct challenge to Russian interests.
Yeah, because it is.
Because it is. Yes.
Because it fucking flat out is.
Yes.
It's like kind of just pointing your finger right at their face.
Yeah, I'm not touching you.
It's worse. It's like
I'm not touching you.
It's like being in a gang, right? Like you're a Crip or a Blood or whatever, and members of this other gang are aligned with other gangs that have a neutral stance on you until the one next door joins that alliance. Right? It's only a matter of time until something happens. And when something happens, all the rest of those are supposed to clamp down on you, because that's their mutual assistance pact. Right? You can't let your enemy live next door to you and expect shit to not pop off. That's just a fact. It's just an absolute fact.
It's the same reason why when China and Russia were so hostile to each other, they had Mongolia.
Mongolia's going, oh fuck.
Yeah. Because no matter, they're the buffer state, right? No matter what, they're going, if anything pops off, they're going to get invaded from both directions simultaneously and will be the primary battleground.
Yep.
But that them being a buffer there helps to ensure a level of reduced tension, because each nation is now has a border with a neutral nation, not with each other there. And that helps. And it was the same thing between NATO and Russia, is that you had all of those Eastern countries, you had the Baltic and on down there, and you didn't have to worry if you were Russia, because NATO was on the other side of those. And you have this nice little buffer. And then we started encroaching, NATO started encroaching on that buffer. That's an act of aggression.
Yeah,
I mean, the rhetoric that's coming out of Washington, D.C. is aggressive.
Like NATO is not a trade organization. Like people confuse that all the time. It's not a trade organization. It's a mutual assistance treaty that exists, that was created to counter Russia. Period.
Yeah.
Period. It was created as in opposition to Russia. And now you want to put one of those countries on its border. A large country with nuclear capabilities on its border in an area that has ethical or ethnic Russians in it.
A huge number of ethnic Russians. Like half of the population of Ukraine is Russian.
You expect Putin to go, oh, well, I guess they voted to, well, just leave them be. Are you fucking crazy? Are you that stupid?
I mean, even if Ukraine had agreed to let Donbass and Crimea go, right?
Well,
and they ended their border at the Dnieper.
Even if they let Crimea and the Donbass region go, and those areas joined Russia, you still have Ukraine on Russia's border.
Well, yeah, you still have just a river, an easily crossable river, as we saw just a few days ago when Russian troops blew across it like it was nothing. We have an easily crossable river, and that's your only buffer between them is a river. And a major river that both countries' navies are going to want to go up and down.
And whose resources each country is going to want to use.
Yeah, it's oh my god.
I mean, when they took Crimea, when Russia took control of Crimea, there's a river going into Crimea, right? The river was used for the area of Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula, right? Freshwater area for the Crimean Peninsula. Ukraine literally poured cement into the river to stop the river.
Yep.
Like, do you understand what's happening here? Like, poke the bear, punch the bear in the fucking eye. Right now, they poke the bear again. Now the bear fights back, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, bear man bad." Like, Putin's not a good guy. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm not saying Russia was right. I'm saying, what the fuck did you expect was going to happen?
Yeah, and all you had to do was not the Eastern, the Western allies, right? Just had to not fuck with Eastern countries. They just had to not want to enact this aggressive expansion, this imperialism, and that's what it is. It's American imperialism. NATO was itself American imperialism.
Even if it's about trade, say it's about trade, right? You can enter into a trade deal with Ukraine without trying to put them in NATO.
Yeah, very easily. And it's, and that's the thing is, it's like the United States was never supposed to form alliances like this. They were never, America was never supposed to be this imperialist power. That was not how it was originally envisioned by the men who wrote the founding documents of the country.
I really wish Daniel Shea had seceded.
Yeah. Shays Rebellion would have been great to have as having had it worked. Or if the anti-federalists had won out over the federalists, even would have been fucking nice.
Yeah. The Articles of the Confederation limited the federal government.
And now you have congressmen who want to have the president issue, think about what this says, the president issue letters of marque and reprisal for Russian flag vessels.
They Lindsey Graham openly called for Putin's assassination.
Yeah,
that moron.
Yeah, there's and now he called for that on Twitter, and then now there's a Republican from Texas who issued who submitted a proposition to have, and it's hilarious. Like, I have to laugh because the president can't issue letters of marque and reprisal. Only Congress can. In the Constitution, it expressly says that only Congress has the power to issue letters of marque and reprisal. And a member of Congress who should be familiar with that, if he's going to mention it, is like, let's give the president even more power now. And not only that, let's make sure that he uses it to go after a rival nuclear power.
Yep. Yeah, it's fucking FUBAR. The whole thing is foobar. And we're not saying Russia's right. We're not saying Russia's right. Putin's a terrible person. Putin's a terrible person.
Putin's a giant piece of shit.
Pieces of shit.
Yeah, he's an autocrat. He's a tyrant. He's absolutely awful. His list of human rights abuses is 1.5 miles long.
It's almost as long as the United States.
Yeah. He's terrible. Yeah, he is. But that doesn't mean that you have to get involved when he attacks another terrible government in another terrible country run by Nazis. That's just not your fight.
Fucking Nazis.
When two bullies start fighting each other, you do not run over and choose sides. You just let them beat each other up.
There is a third option. Just watch.
Yeah. There's that really good meme, and it's two chicks fighting, and there's a guy in the back smoking a bowl. We just need to smoke a bowl and stay the fuck out of it.
Yeah, and just watch and be like, huh, well,
boom.
Yeah, that's it. You don't have to be involved, nor should America get involved. It's not our fight. It's not our fucking business. It's nobody else's business but Russia and Ukraine. All these other countries getting involved is a load of horse shit. It's a border dispute and a regional dispute between two nations. It is not your fight. Do not get involved in it. There is no reason to pick sides. Yep.
Until Ukraine starts doing, Ukrainian Russian order or Ukrainian order mail order brides with free AA-12 or free AK-12s. Like, I don't have a dog in this fight.
Yeah, if they're like, hey, here's an AKS-74U for you. At that point, I'm gonna be like,
she's 5'5", blonde, blue eyes, and comes with a, AKS-74.
Man, have you seen Ukrainian
5,000 rounds
and 5,000 rounds?
Yeah, here's 5,000 rounds of tool ammo, and here's a Ukrainian blonde with 32 H's. At that point, I might consider.
Holy back problems, Batman.
Dude, have you seen Ukrainian women? Holy crap.
Yeah. Oh. All right, let's throw some plugs and get out of here.
Buy Derica's book. It's called Think for Yourself. Yep. It's available on Amazon Prime.
I hope she gets better soon.
Yeah, hopefully she gets better soon, is able to be back on the show. But until then, we'll keep pimping her book. So buy Derica's book. Make sure if you want to care for your beard like a Viking, you hit up thebeardstruggle.com. Use code InkDanarchus15. Get 15% off of your order. They have their Platinum Scents out now. They have the Beard Straightener 2.0 out now. It's got carbon fiber and gold on it. It's super neat. And if you use code InkDanarchus15, you get 15% off. Check out our boy at Poppins Patches. He makes a whole shit ton of patches that we rock constantly. He makes the tactical tri-corner hat that Josh is wearing. And he supports the show and is super cool, and you should definitely support him. Also, check out Boog Boogie79 on Twitter if you want to get some of the Boog flags like me and Chris have, where we have the Boog Unity flag, we have the Boog State flags. It's got all sorts of cool stuff over there. Also, I am an affiliate for RK Spookware. If you use your 3D printer to make shooty boys and you need parts for those, no better place to go than over there. He's got some cool merch, and his little logos are always adorable. So check out RK Spookware. Don't forget to check us out on alternative media like Odyssey and Rumble and MeWe. We're on all of those. Did I miss anything?
Not that I can think of. But those are all linked. Those are all linked in the description below.
All right.
On that note, Josh, give us a piece of life advice.
Keep some marshmallows handy for the impending nuclear apocalypse.
The trick is you hold them out just in front of you so that for a brief moment you can see it roast to perfection before you vaporize.
So,
yes.
On that note, Red Man bad, Comedy Man bad. Go check your preps. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.